Good afternoon. After Trump won the election last year, I was told by my conservative friends to give Trump a chance. I did. The other day, he lost his chance. He decided to ban legitimate news organizations from a press conference held by his White House press secretary, Sean Spicer. That was it. He has lost his chance with me. He's still the president. He's still my president, much to my chagrin. And I think he is going to be president much to the chagrin of many people in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. More and more of those will be conservatives who find that Donald Trump isn't what you thought he was. It angers me that a president of the United States can be so dismissive of the media, especially a media that helped him in many ways become president to begin with. Let us go back to a year ago when CNN gave a lot of coverage to Donald Trump's candidacy. Many would say that Donald Trump had too much coverage back then. You didn't hear Donald Trump being critical of CNN back then, or the other networks. But as soon as it became obvious that he was going to be president, he decided to start bashing the media, start yelling about fake news. Well, let's face facts. The media is not perfect. They've made mistakes. There are some journalists who've cut corners and who've invented stories, but those are about as common as bad cops. Do we call all cops bad because a few are bad? Do we call all teachers bad because there are a few bad teachers that molest their children that are in their classroom, or let some slide by that shouldn't slide by? Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump had his chance. He could have changed a lot of the rhetoric. He could have moderated his views. He could have sought to cooperate with Democrats and to show that he was a president who could bridge differences. He won the electoral vote, the 11th smallest victory in American history, not the overwhelming one he likes to pretend. He lost the popular vote by the largest margin a president elected by the Electoral College has ever lost it by. Instead of recognizing that he had really no mandate, he's acting like he's got this huge, gigantic mandate. Now, his party won a significant victory in Congress, surprisingly enough, but it was less about the Republicans winning than the Democrats losing it. They should have won. This was their opportunity. They had a candidate they should have beaten. They had congressional approval levels at the lowest they've ever been, and yet they didn't get the job done. So Donald Trump's victory is a hollow one. And had he been savvy enough and smart enough to realize this, he could have understood that he should have been more of a politician and less of a demagogue. And now we're beginning to see that his ego is getting the best of him. His temperament is getting the best of him. And it's infecting his staff. And the problem is, there's a very serious cancer on the Trump administration, and that cancer's name is Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon used to run Breitbart, an alternate media site that, for some reason, Donald Trump thinks is actual legitimate journalism. It's highly biased. It has a very significant conservative slant and almost a conspiratorial feel that reminds me a lot of Alex Jones and his lunatic fringe. Now, let me be perfectly frank. There is liberal media out there. There's Huffington Post, there's a lot of others. But generally, by and large, the traditional mainstream media has been liberal. It's because it's in New York City, which has been more of a liberal city than the rest of the country. It's not necessarily intent. It's like if you live in New York City all your life, suddenly you move to, say, Forest City, North Carolina. You're going to see people more conservative than you ever thought. They're going to look at you being some sort of liberal hippie, when in New York you were considered a conservative. Republicans in New York City are basically Democrats in North Carolina. That's pretty much it, in general. Now, there are some the Republicans in New York City that are very conservative, but not that many. But it's like a New Yorker coming down here and looking around going, my God, this place is repressive and backwards, and and it's a cultural difference. The networks were born around New York City, so there is a bit of a liberal slant. It's not necessarily an intent. And here's the thing: the establishment throughout history has leaned conservative. The creative and journalistic communities have always leaned left. That is throughout history. You can go back to the Romans. Anybody that has tried to keep to tell the news in any form throughout history tends to lean left to the establishment. Not always, but in general. Now, Donald Trump, I'm not going to argue about president's policy here so much. I do think he's being an idiot when it comes to the whole immigration thing. Let's face it. There's already talk about the agricultural industry being severely hampered by the immigration and the deportations. And here is the beginning of the end. A lot of agricultural areas vote Republican. When you start seeing farmers having a hard time getting people to harvest their fields, who are they going to call? Whites? No. African Americans? Some will go, most won't. Because they're going to want to do jobs that actually pay a livable wage. Most of these jobs don't. They work you very hard for very low pay. So guess what? Congratulations, Trumpites. You're finding a very painful lesson in all of this rhetoric. The very people that clean your hotel rooms or your houses, the very people that wash the dishes in the restaurants you go to, or in some cases cook the food that you eat in these fancy restaurants, that harvest that food, that wash your cars, that may do other things that are so-called too menial tasks for whites and African Americans and normal Americans, so to speak. They're actually been here for a while. My feeling has always been that the best way to accomplish, to solve the illegal immigration problem is essentially what I call a graduated amnesty. First of all, find out where all these illegals are and give them a simple option. You either go on this program to get legal or you leave. Now, it's not just going to be an easy way. It's going to be harder than it would be if you were here legally. But it's not going to be impossible. It will simply be a few added steps. Not easy, but not impossible, to become legal. It will not necessarily break the bank. They won't have to go back to Mexico to do it. They can stay here. But they have to show that they're willing to atone for what they've done. It's not the worst thing in the world. Now, if there's a criminal element that's come through, which there is always in these huge emigrations of people Throughout history, there's always a criminal element to a certain degree, but it's a very small part of that. And I'll get to the refugee problem in just a moment. The vast majority of Mexicans and other Hispanics and others have come through this country illegally are here to make a better life for themselves. And they simply could not wait to do it legally. Either economic pressures or putting a simple matter of, hey, I got to get across here illegally and find a job so I can feed my family before they starve to death. So, how do we stem the tide? First of all, it's already stemming a lot to begin with. There are fewer Mexicans coming across the border than ever before, and that was happening during the Obama administration. In some cases, there were more Mexicans leaving to go back to Mexico than coming across the border. So the problem was starting to solve itself, essentially. If they're starting to see there are better opportunities in their homeland, they're going to go, hey, I can go back home, live amongst my own people, and make a pretty good living, and I don't have to deal with this crap from Donald Trump and his people. The whole wall thing is the most asinine thing I've ever heard of. You're forcing a sovereign nation to pay for a wall that you're building. How are you going to do that? Oh, there's this import tax. Mexican companies aren't going to pay that tax. Americans who are going to buy Mexican products will pay the tax. So Americans are paying it. You want to solve the problem? Forget about the wall and put more legal American consulates along the border. Advertise them. Say, if you want to come to America legally, here is how to do it. Promote better business in Mexico. Promote more stability in Mexico. Find ways to help stabilize the Mexican government, the Mexican economy. Go help the Mexican government go after these drug cartels that are committing horrendous crimes. That's how you do it. Not by trying to be imposing your will on Mexico, but by saying, hey, we can help you out. If you want our help, we can help you out. We're not telling you have to have it. We're not going to tell you how to do it, but hey, this is some advice we have for you. We've had to deal with some of this ourselves. Let's help you out. We'll help you out. And that would do a lot of good. It would help bring stability to Mexico, help them get their drug situation under control, and more people would want to live there. And it would solve the problem itself. But no, Donald Trump has to beat his chest and we got to send all of them back. How are you going to send 12 million people back across the border? Do you know how much it's going to cost? It has been estimated to cost between $100 and $200 billion. And that will almost certainly rise. The cost of apprehending these people, of putting them in custody for a while before you move them across the border. You're simply going to dump them across the border? What if Mexico says, no, we're not going to let you bring them here? You're going to fly them into Mexico in a hostile landing and dump them off and take off again? What would if Mexico decided, hey, we're going to bust these people back up there and say, no, we don't want them back? What if they did that? What are you going to do then? That's the whole point of it. Now to the refugee thing. Yes, I believe we should take a look at the validation process for refugees and make sure it's keeping potential terrorists out. I absolutely agree with that. But a blanket ban on anybody from these 7 countries that have been listed is dumb. It's making the very people that we should be trying to convince that we are the good guys look at us as being the bad guys because we consider all of them to be the bad guys. Donald Trump, I firmly believe, believes every single Muslim's evil. Do you think 1.3 billion people are going to agree on every single aspect of Islam? They can't agree what to have to lunch. There are Muslims who eat bacon. Trust me, there are. It's essentially against their religion to do it, but they do it anyway. They're Christians who eat shrimp. I'm a Christian. I eat shrimp. Guess what? The Bible says you shouldn't eat shellfish. Oh, well. Guess what? There are Muslims who are good people. Muslims who are proud Americans. Muslims who have fought for this country and died for this country to protect the freedoms that they came to this country to enjoy. And now you're telling them that they're not welcome? Because a few of their fellow Muslims decide they want to be evil and terrorize America? Congratulations, Donald Trump, you're doing ISIS's work for them. How genius of you. You're helping ISIS recruit more and more people every single day. Or if ISIS should follow the very next group that's going to pop up. Al-Qaeda's pretty much a shell of its former self. They're still kind of around a little bit. They're not as big as they once were. Since Osama bin Laden's dead, they're kind of splintered off into little groups here and there. But you know, as soon as ISIS is defeated, somebody else is going to come along, whether it be in Egypt, whether it be in Yemen, whether it be in Somalia, or Libya, or Algeria, or Tunisia, or wherever. The fact of the matter is, Mr. President, thanks to your blatant stupidity at this whole blanket ban, and there are countries that had terrorists that have come here that attacked America that you didn't ban people from coming. Do you know what I want? Know why? Because he's got businesses there. Why no blanket ban against Saudi Arabia or Egypt? How many of the terrorists on 9/11 came from Saudi Arabia? All of them save one. But yet no blanket ban against Saudi Arabia. No, it's the countries that are supposedly evil. Well, you're honking off people. Let's face it. The biggest problem that America's government has had over the last few decades is kissing up Saudi Arabia and not trying to normalize relations with Iran. Used to be the other way around. Used to be Iran were the good guys and Saudi Arabia were the bad guys. But ever since the Islamic Revolution in Iran, the Saudis have been America's bestest buddies in that region. Same for Israel, of course. And there's a reason for that. Because Saudi Arabia is one faith, one part of the faith. Iran is another part. Google it. I'm not going to go into whole details here, but let's just say that there's a reason why Saudi Arabia and Iran are not exactly the bestest of buddies. Okay? So, about the economy. Well, apparently there's this thought that cutting taxes will do the trick. Well, that didn't exactly work for George W. Bush. That didn't exactly work entirely well for Ronald Reagan. To a degree it did. For the most part it didn't. In fact, the only times we've had significant job growth in this country were during the Bill Clinton and Barack Obama administrations. During the Reagan era, the latter part of the Reagan era, the economy started slowing. During the first Bush era, it slowed significantly and we had a recession. We had job losses. There was a reason why Bush got defeated in 1992 even after this tremendous success of the Gulf War. The economy sucked. He couldn't keep that momentum from 91 after winning the Gulf War going through it because the economy sucked. And that's why Bill Clinton won. There's a reason why John McCain didn't win in 2008. And it's because the economy stunk. We had the collapse of 2008, the whole banking collapse. It nearly created a depression. In many ways, Barack Obama helped keep us from getting into a recession. Or I should say depression. We were still in a recession, one of the worst in history, but we didn't go into a depression. And for that, he gets some credit. Of course, the Republicans will never admit this, but tax cuts really don't help the economy all that much. They'll tell you it will because it's always, the government takes so much in taxes, they're going to... It's always been, how much do you think you're really going to save with these tax cuts? You're not really going to get that much savings at all, if any. In some cases, you may even pay more in taxes because guess what? You ain't rich enough to see the benefits of tax cuts. Because that's where Donald Trump wants his tax cuts to really go. And it's not because, I want to free all this money up to go into the economy. No. Dwight Eisenhower had a brilliant solution. 91% tax rate for the highest earners. But if you invest that money back into your businesses by paying your people better, by investing in new equipment, by building new buildings, blah, 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 your tax rate, your earnings go down, your tax rate goes down because that money is going back into your business. Now, because of the lenient tax policies, a lot of that money is sitting in the bank account somewhere, maybe in Switzerland, maybe in the Cayman Islands, maybe somewhere else, and not coming back into the economy to help stimulate growth. You see, that's the problem that Reagan, that the Bushes, and now Donald Trump failed to realize. And a lot of congressional Republicans fail to realize. Tax cuts don't work. Because the rich are not investing that money in the economy in the way that they need to. It's not making up for the shortfalls. That's the problem. That's why Republicans have seen the economy shrink and go into recession more often during Republican presidents than in Democratic presidential terms. That's why Bill Clinton had an economy booming during most of his administration. That's why Barack Obama had the longest growth of job growth in modern history during his administration, because his policies actually promoted job growth. Not to the extent it probably should have, because a lot of those jobs were not high-paying jobs. And the one thing I will fault Obama for was he didn't get the job training push. He didn't push job training as hard enough as he should have. And that is one fault I will fault for Trump. Now, foreign policy. The image of Donald Trump across the world is god-awful. You thought they looked down on W? W is looking real good compared to Donald Trump right now. Unless, of course, you're in Russia and they love them some Donald Trump. Here's the problem. China. He's antagonized China. Or was antagonizing them until he realized, I like this one China policy. The whole thing with getting the Taiwan's leader, it was a mistake. My bad. Yeah. You take on one of the most powerful nations on the planet, and you stumble right out of the gate by basically throwing out a policy the United States had for nearly 40 years. And for good reason. Because China wants to bring back Taiwan into their country. They consider Taiwan to be a renegade province. But a lot of people don't realize Taiwan considers China to be a renegade country. They consider themselves to be the legitimate government of China. If you were a smart president, Donald Trump, you would recognize that, hey, maybe if Taiwan gave up their claims of wanting to retake the mainland and China said, hey, you know what, if Taiwan doesn't want to change their government, we'll let them be a free nation, let's just be friends, We'll do our thing, you do your thing, it's all kosher. But Donald Trump decided to try and be a badass and say, I'm going to talk to the Taiwanese leader directly without Chinese permission, because even though that, yeah, China's got nukes and China has a huge military and China has said that they will one day retake Taiwan militarily and destabilize that whole region. And let's not forget the nutcase in North Korea, folks. Donald Trump does not know about diplomacy. He doesn't know about government bureaucracy. He wants to tear it away, but it's awfully hard because a lot of it is needed. Look at his EPA pick. A guy who sued the very agency he's now running because he wants to destroy that agency. His choice for education secretary is someone who wants to get rid of public education. Because she's never taught a day in her life. She never even went to public school. And this is the person you put in charge of education? The Secretary of State is a former CEO of Exxon. He has no foreign policy experience, but he's got plenty of business experience, especially with Russia. My firm belief is Donald Trump's administration will implode. Congressional Republicans will start seeing it affect them. One or two things will happen. They'll wait until the elections of 2018, and they'll get their asses kicked by the Democrats. Or Republicans will start running against Trump and throwing him under the bus. My feeling is something bad is going to happen to force the Republicans to remove Donald Trump. They're going to have to bite the bullet and accept Mike Pence to serve out the remainder of the term. They'll more than likely lose the 2020 presidential election. They want to keep Congress, though. Here's the thing. My firm belief is they had no idea Donald Trump was actually going to win the election. They wanted to keep Congress. They were fully expecting Hillary Clinton to be the President of the United States. Donald Trump himself, on the night of the election, doubted he would win the election. Now he says he didn't doubt, but back then he did say he doubted. It was an upset. And he should be celebrating that upset. I pulled off the greatest upset in presidential election history. And he should say, hey, I did it. Everybody thought I wasn't going to do it. I didn't think I was going to do it, but I did it. And he said, you know what? I'm going to be a good president. Instead, he's decided to be a bad one. He's decided to be so blatantly different, to do some things all different. When we realize most presidents, even the ones that aren't necessarily that great, like W., in the end, do a pretty decent job. Okay? They screw up a lot of things, but W screwed up a lot of things. But we did pretty well in Afghanistan for the most part. We avenged the victims of 9/11, but yet we went to Iraq, and that was what really screwed things up for Bush. Had he not gone into Iraq, and had he wrapped things up in Afghanistan, he probably would be considered a great president. The biggest problems were Iraq and Katrina. Had he done a better response for Katrina, and he not gone into Iraq, or had he gone to Iraq, got the problem solved, and got out within 6 months to a year, then he might have been considered a pretty decent president. Instead, he may be considered one of the worst we've ever had. I don't think he's a bad guy or anything. I think some of the people he had in his administration were not necessarily booking their places in heaven. I will be that honest with you. But I think George W. Bush isn't necessarily an evil man. I think in many ways he's a pretty decent guy. He just listened to the wrong people, including that vice president of his, which I think is hellbound. Yes, I just judged Dick Cheney, and I'm saying he's not going to make the cut when it comes to the pearly gates. Okay. As for the current occupant of the White House, let's face it. It's hard to. You really can't. You really should not criticize the president's family, but considering that Ivanka Trump is influential in dictating policy and such, I think she can be considered fair game. And I think she's trying to make money off the fact that her dad's the president. I think that's wrong. I think that's it smacks of. I mean, it's one thing to be Billy Carter, the brother of Jimmy Carter, selling Billy beer, or being Roger Clinton trying to book gigs because you're the president's brother. That's one thing. When you're the daughter and you actually have a say in the influence of policy in the White House, when your husband has policy influence over policy in the White House, that's different. Do you think Jimmy Carter ever listened to Billy Carter about anything when it comes to the government? Or I don't think Roger Clinton was giving Bill Clinton any advice on the economy or anything like that. They may have talked about music, that's about it. But, yeah. But Ivanka, the best thing she could do is say, you know what, I'm not going to have anything to do with the president's administration. But she sees herself as being, the first daughter, taking up a lot of the responsibilities that Melania Trump really should be doing. I don't think Melania Trump really wants to be first lady. I don't think she really wants to be Donald Trump. I don't think she really wants Donald Trump to be president. I honestly think she didn't think he'd actually win the damn thing. But he did. He's our president. Now we're stuck with him for 4 years, or until the Republicans get enough sense to realize just how bad this guy is and just how corrupt he is, and realize, we might want to, find something and go, you know what, Democrats, he's a pretty bad guy. Let's get rid of him and let's go, okay, we'll slog through these 4 years and try to make, let's have the 2020 election and get through that. Okay? This is the tough part. For pretty much all of my life, every president I've known, and I can remember the earliest part of the Carter administration. Every president, for the most part, I've respected and, to a certain degree, liked. I didn't like a lot of what Reagan did, but I liked him. I didn't like a lot of what George Herbert Walker Bush did, but I liked him and respected him a lot. Bill Clinton, policy-wise, he was good. Personal stuff, he wasn't so great at, but for the most part, I liked him. George W. Bush, a lot of policy stuff he did I didn't like. Him personally, I think he was okay. Barack Obama, I thought was pretty good. Policy-wise, and a pretty good guy as a president, as a pretty decent guy. Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime that I cannot stand, that I actively hate, that I actively despise. And I hate that. I would love to be able to sit here and tell you that I respect the president. I don't. I think he's awful. I think his entire administration is corrupt. I think it's going to be to the detriment of this country. I think he's a sellout to Vladimir Putin. I think it's not so much Vladimir Putin has stuff on him. I think it's a situation where Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are best as buddies, in a sense, and they realize it's a good relationship because, hey, he got me elected, I help him out, he helps me out. It's a great relationship. Until he realizes when Vladimir Putin sticks the knife in him, and Russia finds a way to take advantage of it to our detriment. What I fear is that we're going to wake up one day to find out Russia has started hostilities against the Balkan states of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. That he has started to engage more hostilities against Ukraine. That he is trying to gain back some of the territory that was lost when the Soviet Union collapsed. And then it becomes to where, okay, what happens if he decides to attack the Balkan states? What if he decides out of the blue to go after parts of Finland? Because there are some Russians who consider Finland to be part of Russia, to be a part of Russia that was stolen from them. Is Vladimir Putin one of these people? It bears watching what happens in this connection between Russia and Trump. Darrell Issa the other day actually said on Bill Maher's show that there should be a special prosecutor selected to investigate this. The question becomes, will Donald Trump have the guts to appoint one? Richard Nixon set one up, and Archibald Cox later fired him, or got an attorney general to fire him, which led to Leon Jaworski, who was even tougher than Archibald Cox. And eventually that became the reason why Richard Nixon resigned, because the heat was on him too much, and he realized there was no way in hell he was going to survive. I have a lot of Republican friends. I have a lot of friends who believe Trump's a great president. No, he's not. I'm sorry. I don't see it. I can't see it. I would love to be able to tell you, you know what, he's got a good chance of being president. I'd love to sit here and say, hey, I don't agree with him, but I think he's got a chance to be a pretty decent president. I can't stand here and say that. During the same time of the Bush administration, back in 2001, there were a lot of things I disagreed with Bush about, but I didn't have this bad feeling about the nation that I have now. I thought Bush would have a chance to do some pretty good things. Some things I may not agree with, but I think, I gave him a chance. I gave Bush a chance. He did great in response to 9/11. And it's not entirely his fault that they didn't pick up on 9/11. That was a lot of stuff that had been brewing under different administrations. You could fault everyone back to, I'd probably say Carter, about that. But that was the intelligence community not getting together, not working together. But of course now Trump knocks the intelligence community because, they might find out about my connection with Russia. Here's the one thing. Every president has found a reason to hate the media. From being kind of, I don't really like him. But there are some guys I think found it kind of cool, like Barack Obama. There were some people in the media he didn't like, some he did. To actively hating it, like Bush, to a certain degree. Or Richard Nixon. Donald Trump has declared war on the media, on the traditional media. And there's a reason for it. He wants to manipulate the message. This isn't spin he's doing. This is outright taking the message and twisting it to what he wants it to be. Okay? He wants you to find out exactly from him what he wants you to know. The problem is, what is he doing that he doesn't want you to know about? That's the media. That's the media's job. That's the media's sacred responsibility to the American people to make sure Donald Trump is doing stuff that is in the best interest of the American people. And if he's doing something that's not in the best interest of the American people, that goes against our Constitution, that goes against the Bill of Rights, that goes against the spirit of this nation, it is in the interest of America that the media find this out. And if he's spewing about fake news and fake this crap and saying CNN is not legit and New York Times is not legit, it's because he's got something to hide. Or he's wanting to do something and he's wanting to make sure these news organizations, even if they find out about it, people won't believe him. Because he's laying the groundwork to do something to screw you over, to screw this nation over. He's laying the groundwork to when they find out about it, when the next Carl Bernstein and Woodward and Bernstein come around, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein come around, the next generation, to find out what Trump's been up to, like they found out about what Nixon was up to. He wants you not to believe it, because he's told you they are fake news and they lie and they do this, and the fact of the matter is CNN helped Trump get elected. That's the truth. CNN giving him all that exposure. The other networks giving him all that exposure. Got him elected. And instead of thanking them for helping him out, he's labeling them fake news. Because they're telling the truth about him. Why is it when you catch kids in a lie, they will deny? Why is it when you catch a husband doing wrong, they'll tell you the wife's cheating, when then they themselves, in fact, are cheating? No, I'm not cheating. No. It's my wife who's cheating. That's the problem. He's screwing you over, and instead of listening to the media telling you that he's screwing you over and he's got his connection with Russia, you're believing the guy that's the criminal here because you voted for him. And you're not smart enough to realize that you made a mistake. You're not smart enough yet. Or maybe your ego is getting in the way. Maybe you don't want to admit to yourself that you made a mistake for voting this guy in. That's the problem. Hillary Clinton was not the better choice either. She had plenty of baggage, but she was a hell of a lot better than this jackass. Donald Trump is bad news for America. And it's going to come to a point where the Republicans will realize that. Some of them are already realizing that. This whole Russia connection has me worried about the fact that he may sell us out to Russia. Worst case scenario. He may sell out important secrets to Russia because they have something on him. Maybe they do have something on him. And if he's our president and they have blackmail on him, that is bad news. The man who has the key to the nuclear arsenal is compromised. If that is true, if Russia indeed has blackmail material on him, that if exposed would completely destroy him. If he is giving away our secrets, which I worry about, because where there is smoke, there is fire. There's a lot of smoke here, folks. So there's got to be some fire to it. This story ain't going away. And he, instead of denying it, you've ever noticed, he never really denies what's going on. He says, "Oh, these are fake news. This is just lies." No. He's not denying it. And people are buying it. You don't think that Donald Trump, who has in the past said he liked Putin, who actually had conversations with, no, I had nothing. Yeah, you do. You have business dealings in Russia. And not all Russian business is on the up and up. There is corruption there. There's lots of it. And Vladimir Putin likes his take. So guess what? America, we may very well have a president who's compromised. And that's a scary thing. Why is it that Donald Trump is so insistent that we don't look at his tax returns? Why is that? Every other president has put them out there in modern times. W did it. Obama did it. Clinton did it. George Herbert Walker Bush did it. Ronald Reagan did it. Jimmy Carter did it. Gerald Ford did it. The reason they do that is because of what happened with Richard Nixon. Donald Trump ain't doing it. Why? Why not do it? Because he has something to hide. If he had nothing to hide, he'd do it. Oh, but I don't want people to know my business. We already have a general idea what your business is. Most people don't really care, but they are worried about the fact that you're the first president since Richard Nixon not to release your tax returns. And there's that connection again. The biggest difference is Richard Nixon was paranoid. Richard Nixon actually did a lot of pretty good things. Richard Nixon, had he had enough sense to come forward and say, yes, we screwed up with all of this. So folks, let's not forget that Richard Nixon wasn't entirely evil. He was paranoid. He wasn't all evil. He actually had, in many ways, done pretty good. The EPA, the very department that Trump and his cronies want to destroy, Richard Nixon set up. A lot of the things they want to destroy, Nixon set up. The Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, Nixon did that. So if Watergate never happened, if he'd come clean about it and said, look, my guys did something bad, we're going to atone for it, I'm going to get rid of these guys, and boom, they're done. The cover-up is what destroyed Nixon, not the act itself. Had Nixon come clean, he'd have survived, and he might have been considered one of the best presidents we ever had. Instead, he kept the cover-up. He got paranoid. He had to fight the media. So that makes me wonder, what's Trump got to hide? What's he really doing? What's he done in the past before he became president that has him worried about the media finding this stuff out? Because once they find it out, who's going to believe it? He has to discredit the media because something in his past is going to come up and haunt him. And he has to lay the groundwork for you not to believe it. And if he's convinced you the media is out to get him, and you should believe the president and not the media, you maybe need to rethink about that, because why would the media want to bring down a president? Why would they? Because if the president's doing wrong, who's going to tell you they're doing wrong? Who's going to tell you they're breaking the law? You think the Republicans are going to do that? Not unless they have a vested interest in telling you that he's doing wrong. No. The media is the one thing that keeps government in check. The entire government, the judicial, the legislative, and the executive. They tell you what they are doing. Okay? And if a reporter finds out that Donald Trump is selling this nation out to the Russians, which I fear might happen, I'm not saying it will happen, I'm fearing it might happen. How are we going to know what happens if you don't believe the media is telling you the truth? When in fact they might very well be telling you the truth, and you're not believing it because you've been told by Donald Trump that it's all fake news, and you can't disbelieve your president because, heaven forbid, you might have been wrong voting for him. Folks, it's important to realize where we are right now. We have to look at the possibility that the President of the United States is intentionally trying to harm the country for reasons we have no idea about. I am looking at what he's doing, I'm going, what the hell is he doing? These are the moves that no Republican would ever do. He's trying to destroy government. Republicans want government in their form. Yeah, they want it smaller, but they don't want to completely get rid of it. If you want a civilized society, guess what? You got to have a government. You got to have some sort of bureaucracy for that government services to help with the people. You got to have a military. Military is run by the government. To those of you who support Trump, all I'm asking you is to keep an open mind, an eye open, and an ear peeled. And don't assume what Donald Trump tells you is entirely the truth. Okay? Trust, but verify. That's what Reagan said about Gorbachev. Trust, but verify. Trust the media, but verify. Trust Trump, but verify. Okay? Look at what his actions and not what he's saying. Not just what he's saying. Look at what he's doing. Read between the lines. Don't just assume he has the best interest of the country at heart. Because he has not completely devoted himself of his financial empire. He's handed it over to his sons, supposedly. But what makes you think that he's not having little conversations with them from time to time? And we also know more than likely Donald Trump does not have a recording device on his phone. And there's another problem. He has an unsecured cell phone that he uses. Now there are people who go, his phone could be hacked. Here's the thing. His phone might be used for business dealings that we never know about. That we can't trace. That we won't know about. So there's the dilemma right there. So ladies and gentlemen, let me stress once again that you cannot completely entirely trust what Donald Trump is telling you. Okay? There is a reason why he's saying fake news. It's because he's scared they're going to find out something about him that could bring about his downfall. He is learning the lessons of what Richard Nixon. But instead of not doing it in the first place, he's wanting to make sure that when he does these things, if he's not already done them, you don't believe them. You don't believe the reporting you're hearing. Which means that eventually you will believe it. Because eventually the smoke is going to be so thick that the fire is raging out of control, that you'll have no choice but to believe that Donald Trump is destroying the country. The problem is when that realization happens, how much damage has been done. When Nixon was forced to resign, there was still there was still a lot of damage done, but it was reparable. It could be repaired. Gerald Ford did a lot of good. The pardon, looking back at it, was actually a smart thing politically and may have really helped the nation, even though it was extremely unpopular at the time. Ford knew the political cost, and I firmly believe Ford expected to lose in '76. He didn't want to lose, but he expected to lose. And remember, Ford almost got beat by Reagan for the primaries, wouldn't it? What would have happened if Reagan ran against Carter in '76? A little alternate history there. Would have been a lot closer. Wouldn't have been like 1980 when Carter had already had 4 years and... Well, I'm a Democrat. And I'll be the first to admit Carter was not that great of a president. Okay? Now, here's the realization. Donald Trump will be the Republican version of Jimmy Carter. And that's the best case scenario. I think he has no idea what he is in for the next 4 years. I think he's going to make a lot of mistakes. I think and I hate to say that. That's the thing that bugs me, is the fact I'm having to say this about a president. And I think I have no confidence in him. I'm sorry, I don't. I have no confidence in the president of the United States. Every president in my lifetime, I've had a certain degree of confidence in. Hey, when things happen, at least I know they have some competence. We've not gotten to hurricane season yet, folks. What if another Katrina comes along? What if it hits Florida? What if it hits Charleston or Myrtle Beach or Wilmington, North Carolina? What if it devastates all of South Carolina, maybe even a lot of North Carolina? Which, guess what? I'm in North Carolina. What if Hugo comes through again? What if Hugo 2.0 comes through, and instead of just going through Charlotte, goes through Charlotte and this area here? A lot of Trump voters are going to wonder, hey, where's Trump at? Where is he? Why isn't he helping? In the recent tornadoes that happened across the southeast, it took longer than usual for Trump to declare them a disaster area. That's an indicator. Something's not right. That should have happened right then, right now. But for some reason, there was a delay. You could chalk it up, well, he's new to the job, and no. This should have been instantaneous. It should have been, hey, there's tornadoes last night, there's been a lot of damage, the governors are requesting aid, boom, right then. Federal aid, federal declaration of emergency, state of disaster, the whole 9 yards. Should have been smooth as silk, like it had been in pretty much every administration up until now. What happens if there's an earthquake in Los Angeles? The big one finally hits. Or St. Louis, where there are people who believe that the big one will actually hit St. Louis, or perhaps even Cincinnati, or along that area, because there is a fault line running through that area from the Mississippi to the Ohio River. What if it hits there? What if it hits Charleston? There is a fault line under Charleston, South Carolina. What if that hits? What if it's during an earthquake, during a hurricane? That probably won't happen, but you get the drift. Folks, as I wrap this up, I just want you to understand one thing. I love this nation. I was born here, I'm bred here, raised here, lived here all my life. I've been proud to be an American all my life. But Donald Trump is really making it hard right now, because I worry about what he's going to do to this country. I worry about what he's going to do to the reputation of this country. I'm worried about what he's going to do to people that may not be white, Christian, Republican. There are a lot of things that are frankly frightening the hell out of me right now. I hope I'm wrong. But my worst fears are coming true right now. I had hoped that Donald Trump would moderate, would realize that he's got a big job ahead of him and go, you know what? I gotta back off a few things. But no, we're going straight into the wall, straight into the mass deportation, straight into the Muslim ban, and it's making us look like absolute idiots to the world. So folks, if you support Trump, keep your mind open. Keep looking at what his actions are, not just what he's saying, but what he's actually doing. And don't buy into the hype. Don't buy into the cult of personality that I'm afraid is forming around Donald Trump. And I will be the first to admit, I think there was one forming around Obama. Not necessarily because Obama wanted it, but because there were people who put it in there because they hated the whole Bush years so much. And there was even one around W to a certain degree, and maybe even to Bill Clinton. There's even one I would say around Hillary to a certain degree. And that worries me. But the problem with this cult of personality is it could turn into a legitimate cult and could turn into something even worse. It scares me. And yes, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I am wrong about this. Okay? But my gut instinct tells me I'm not. And my gut instinct has a nasty way of being right. So all I'm asking for you folks who support Trump is to, if the day comes you realize that he is not who you think he is, to have the moral courage to admit you cannot support him anymore. And that he has to change or leave office. That's all I'm asking. Keep your eyes open. Keep your ears open. Read between the lines. Look at what he's actually doing, not what he's so much as what he's saying. And don't buy into what he's saying about the media. The media is there to keep him honest. If he's saying they're lying, why is he saying they're lying? Does he have any proof of that? He doesn't offer any proof. The media is not perfect. Neither is the president. So why is he saying they're lying? Think about that. What is the motivation there? Why does he not have any proof? Keep your eyes open, folks. Good night. Good luck. And may the good news be yours. And may God bless America.